Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, these countries are tiny compared to the Soviet Union. They don't pose a serious threat to us. Iran, they spend 1/100th of what we spend on the military. I mean, if Iran ever tried to pose a serious threat to us, they would.
These guys' position on a terror watch list get changed, like wiped off. We're going to ask General Jack Keane why another big name was left off an important warning altogether. The annual list of American enemies released by Director of National Intelligence James Clapper missing two major entities, or is it? Hezbollah and its backer, Iran. Clapper even praises that country for helping to de-escalate threats. As early as 2013, Iran and Hezbollah were listed in the table of contents under the terrorism heading. Just 1 year ago, they were listed again in a section on terror. Clapper even going as far as saying, quote, Hezbollah has increased its global terrorist activity in recent years to a level that we have not seen since the 1990s. Well, that brings us to this year, when both are off the terror listing, though Iran was on a separate list of growing cyber threats. Retired General Jack Keane is the chairman of the Institute for the Study of War and a Fox News military analyst and very, very familiar with both of these groups. General, good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, so we are told by way of explanation that essentially they were recategorized, they were put in a different place in the report, but they're missing from those very prominent sections. What do you make of this?
Well, it seems like there's a pattern in the sense that it's not being emphasized as much. Obviously, it's in the report, but it's not where it normally would be. You know, the Hezbollah is on the Department of State and Department of Treasury terrorist list. But the pattern started, I think, back in 2009 when the president sent the first letter to Khomeini and thousands of people, mass demonstration in the streets in Tehran for the first time ever in the history of the regime, and we did nothing to support it. There seems to be this pattern of de-emphasizing Iran's influence in the region, and certainly its number one proxy organization, its number one terrorist organization is Hezbollah, which is responsible for nothing less than almost 2,000 American deaths and many thousands more from 1980 all the way through 2008. It is quite staggering when you add up and put together what they have done to us. And certainly if anybody deserves to be on that list, they do.
All right, so specifically with regard to Iran, and this is called the Worldwide Threat Assessment. It's unclassified. It's out there for anybody who wants to read it. This is what the assessment says about Iran. It's praised for its intentions to dampen sectarianism, build responsive partners, and de-escalate tensions with Saudi Arabia. How in the world does it go from the year before being both a regional threat to the Middle East and a cyber terror threat to now getting praised for being doing good things or being a good guy in that region?
And, you know, this is an absolute absurdity. This is all under the umbrella of the administration's desire for rapprochement with Iran. And you look at what they truly have done in the near term. The Assad regime, Shannon, was about to fall in 2011. Many people on this network, to include myself, said it's a matter of weeks and months. Quds Force commander Qasem Soleimani, 5,000 Hezbollah, thousands of Iraq Shia militia, and the Quds Force themselves all on the ground to prop up that regime and truly saved it and changed the momentum against the rebel forces. There is no doubt that this organization and the Iranian supreme leader and what they're doing is trying to gain control and establish regional hegemony of the Middle East. That's what they are all about, and we can never take their eyes off of that. Every time we think about the Middle East, you must put first and foremost, ahead of ISIS, I would suggest, and ahead of al-Qaeda, is Iran. Their strategic objective is to dominate the Middle East, and they are beginning to succeed at that. When you look at Iraq, Shannon, we're not going to lose Iraq to ISIS, but we may lose Iraq to Iran, given their gaining influence in Iraq, not just politically, but now even militarily on the ground.
And in the meantime, we tend to continue negotiating with them for years now over a potential nuclear program.
قبل از بیانات رئیس جمهور اسلامی ایران جناب آقای احمدی نژاد شعارهای حضورتون تقدیم می کنم. خروشان پاسخ بدید. امروز سراسر ایران اسلامی از جنوب تا شمال و از شرق تا غرب یک فریاد است و اون مرگ بر امریکا. نفرت و خشم ملت مسلمان بر امریکا رژیم کفر شیطان، بر امریکا رژیم کفر شیطان، امریکا اون رژیم شاخ شکسته، امریکا اون رژیم شاخ شکسته در انتظار رابطه نشسته. رابطمون با امریکا نمیشه، رابطمون با امریکا نمیشه. نبرد ما با امریکا همیشه، نبرد ما. فریاد انسانهای روی زمین، فریاد انسانهای روی زمین، فریاد انسانهای روی زمین. مرگ بر امریکا پلید لعین.
Joel, this is a fascinating read. Why the 12th Imam and why now?
Because it affects Iranian foreign policy right now. In other words, the leaders of Iran believe this is happening. They believe that this Islamic Messiah is coming, this 12th Imam, at the end of days, in the end of time, and that once he comes, either Israel and the United States, Judeo-Christian society as we've known it, will have already been destroyed, or that all the conditions for their destruction will be there, and then the Messiah will come and finish off the infidels and set up an Islamic one-world government. The two key people are Iranian President Ahmadinejad and the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah Khamenei. In fact, Khamenei said this summer that he had visited with the 12th Imam. He said this in July. Now, nobody's quite sure what he means by this, but Ahmadinejad has also said over the last 4 or 5 years that he has had meetings with the 12th Imam. Who are they meeting with? A person? A spirit? A combination? I mean, or are they just making this up? If our intelligence agency was tracking that and explaining to our political leaders, listen, this is how Iran's leaders are making decisions, it would lead you to a conclusion that it's led me to, which is, how exactly would you negotiate with or contain or deter people who believe it's their God-given mission in life to destroy Judeo-Christian civilization using nuclear weapons in order to bring about their Messiah? But in the end, as a follower of Jesus Christ, I would say, like many Christians watching this program would say, we don't have a lot of influence in Washington. And so the question is, what do we do? And my answer is, we want to make sure that everyone in the Middle East has heard the gospel of Jesus Christ, from Tehran to Tel Aviv and everywhere in between. Why? Because a war is coming. I can't tell you, Gary, whether it's this year, whether it's next year, whether it's next summer, 2 years from now. A major war between Iran and Israel is coming, and people are going to die. People are going to suffer. And the question is whether they will have heard the good news that God loves them and wants to adopt them into his family through faith in Jesus Christ or not. And it's critical that we reach that region with the gospel now, because we know the truth. Given that Ezekiel 36 and 37 have already come true, the rebirth of Israel, Jews coming back to the Holy Land, rebuilding the ancient ruins, making the desert bloom, this has happened. Those end times prophecies have happened, which means that if Ezekiel 36 and 37 have already come to pass, isn't it remotely possible that Ezekiel 38 and 39 could come to pass in our lifetime? I think that answer is yes, it could. Not to say that it will, but events are moving in that way.
So is this Gog and Magog prophecy, is this just a warning from God, or is it imminent?
It's inevitable. The scriptures say this day is coming. A lot of complications, a lot of cross currents, one theme. The region is growing unified against Israel, just at a time where the rest of the world, including the U.S. government under the Obama administration, seems to be loosening its support of Israel also. And it's a very dangerous and lonely place for Israel to be. Another reason for followers of Christ to stand with Israel, to bless Israel and the Palestinians at this critical moment.
Today, the United States, together with our allies and partners, has reached a historic understanding with Iran, which, if fully implemented, will prevent it from obtaining a nuclear weapon. This framework would cut off every pathway that Iran could take to develop a nuclear weapon. Iran will face strict limitations on its program, and Iran has also agreed to the most robust and intrusive inspections and transparency regime ever negotiated for any nuclear program in history. So this deal is not based on trust. It's based on unprecedented verification. With this deal, Iran will face more inspections than any other country in the world.
The deal would not shut down a single nuclear facility in Iran, would not destroy a single centrifuge in Iran, and will not stop R&D on Iran's advanced centrifuges. On the contrary, the deal would legitimize Iran's illegal nuclear program. It would leave Iran with a vast nuclear infrastructure. A vast nuclear infrastructure remains in place. The deal would lift sanctions almost immediately, and this at the very time that Iran is stepping up its aggression and terror in the region and beyond the region. In a few years, the deal would remove the restrictions on Iran's nuclear program, enabling Iran to have a massive enrichment capacity that it could use to produce many nuclear bombs within a matter of months. Such a deal does not block Iran's path to the bomb. Such a deal paves Iran's path to the bomb. And it might very well spark a nuclear arms race throughout the Middle East, and it would greatly increase the risks of terrible war. The survival of Israel is non-negotiable. Israel will not accept an agreement which allows a country that vows to annihilate us to develop nuclear weapons, period. In addition, Israel demands that any final agreement with Iran will include a clear and unambiguous Iranian commitment of Israel's right to exist. Thank you.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was highly criticized for his Congress speech on Tuesday, both in the U.S. and at home. But on Wednesday, he received a very rare public support from a rather unexpected source. Faisal Abbas, the editor-in-chief of the popular Saudi-owned website Al Arabiya English, published a long op-ed piece in which he called upon President Obama to listen to the Israeli Prime Minister. It is extremely rare for any reasonable person to ever agree with anything Netanyahu says or does. However, one must admit, Bibi did get it right, at least when it came to dealing with Iran, Abbas wrote. Netanyahu blamed Iran on Tuesday for destabilizing the Middle East.
In the Middle East, Iran now dominates 4 Arab capitals: Baghdad, Damascus, Beirut, and Sana'a. And if Iran's aggression is left unchecked, more will surely follow.
The prominent Arab journalist said that the Israeli Prime Minister hit the nail right on the head and managed to accurately summarize a clear and present danger, not just to Israel, but to other U.S. allies in the region. He added that the only stakeholder that seems not to realize the danger of the situation is President Obama. Middle East analysts believe that the column reflects the views of the Saudi leadership and that such a public support of Netanyahu had to be authorized from above.
On Saturday, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani called on the United States to take a tougher stance against Iran. He was speaking at a rally held in Berlin, Germany, which was attended by several hundred Iranian exiles. An Iranian opposition group of exiles, called National Council of Resistance of Iran, organized the event. The group is associated with the People's Mujahideen of Iran, an armed resistance group that was taken off the U.S. terror list in 2012. After his speech, Giuliani responded to questions about nuclear talks with Iran.
Why we think we should be negotiating with him is only a question that President Obama can answer, and I'm afraid that he's making a very reckless and terrible mistake.
Giuliani said the Iranian government shouldn't be trusted with any kind of nuclear capacity. He said doing so risked the kind of appeasement Britain tried with Nazi Germany in 1938. The former mayor also said that adversaries should fear the U.S., but they no longer do today.
President Obama doesn't instill fear in Putin. He doesn't instill fear in the Ayatollah. He doesn't instill fear in Assad. He drew 12 red lines for Assad and never acted. So the president has lost all leverage.